Hi friends, welcome to CodeNet, and today we want to understand how we can work with color inside an HTML document. I mean, color simply gives out the beauty that's needed for someone to even perform certain services. We can see and we've witnessed colorful websites that have been produced by different individuals. Hence, how can we work with color inside an HTML document? The three types of colors that we will see and double check on how we can work with is simply how to implement the background color for an HTML document, how to change the color for text for an HTML document, and how to add a border line to text inside an HTML document. Now, color, we could say it's more like a value that's passed to a style as an attribute of HTML. And when we understood, of course, the previous sessions, when we were understanding actually how the attributes work with HTML, we said an attribute is specified in the opening tag of an HTML document. Hence, we can't specify an attribute in the closing tag like here on H. No, it should be passed on actually the opening tag of an HTML document. Hence, how can we work with color inside an HTML document? Well, at first, let's understand how a color as a value can be passed on to a style, which is definitely an HTML attribute when it comes to HTML. So let's say we want to change now the actual color for the entire document of HTML, the actual background color. What can we do? Definitely, we need to understand that the actual style, which is an attribute of HTML, it is the style that actually works with color in HTML. Definitely, style in other forms is an inline CSS. In the next session, we'll be understanding CSS, hence please we'll see what we are talking about when we say style is an inline CSS, and we'll also see the other types of CSS definitely. So we can say, okay, style as simply an attribute is actually equal to, we understand, because an attribute, it should be the name, an equal sign, then the value in between the double quotes. So we can say, okay, style, the background color for this document should be, you've seen I've inserted of course the full columns, and then the background color should be, let's say, black. Let's go in dark mode, okay. So we are saying the background color for this document should be black. We want to see the three ways in which we can use color in HTML: to insert the background color, which is the very first thing we are doing, and also to change the color of text, and finally to implement the border to certain text. So we are saying, okay, the background color, this is how we insert, of course, we change the background color. The background color, of course, should be black. And that's what we are doing, using the style as an attribute of HTML. I'm sure you understand how the style works from the session that we had. So if we go back on our browser now, definitely you can tell that at first the background color is white by default. If we refresh the browser, hopefully you've saved the document from the IDE, Control S to save. My document is on autosave, hence no need to save. If I refresh, you can tell that the background color has changed to black. Since the text were also black, I mean the color dominance and anything related to that, those people who are highly qualified, I'm sure they understand what has happened now. So we can even see the text. If we change now the color for the actual text that should be inside this HTML document, when we go back on our IDE, we can say, okay, the actual body now, the things that should be visible to everyone, to the users and anything related to that, the actual body, the style, of course, since it is an attribute that works with color as a value, we can say, okay, the color stands for the color for the text. That's what we are saying. The color for the text, a full colon from there, should be, let's say, white. So definitely when we go back on our editor, Control S to save. My document is on autosave. If you want also your document maybe to be on autosave, you can go on where it says File, and down there on the drop down menu you will see what says autosave. Make sure it's ticked, and then there will be no need to be saving the documents, of course. If you go back on our browser now, definitely here you can just refresh. Once you refresh, you can see that okay, we've even now changed the color for the text. The color is now white. So we've seen two ways in which we can implement a color inside an HTML document. The background color can change. Not just the background color, also definitely the text color can also change. So if we go back on our IDE again, here we can see the third way in which we can use color in CSS. And in this third method, it is simply how to add a border with a specific color to a respective element of an HTML. For example, here we can add, of course, a border to this text as a paragraph. I've implemented, definitely here you can double check, I've implemented a semicolon to denote that under the same style I want to add another value. So you can say okay, border, which is the actual keyword for it to implement the border, and then you can say okay, the border, the thickness for the border should be 3px. You can use px, percentage, you will see of course from the browser which one is appropriate for you. 2px, and the type of border that I want should be solid, of course a solid color, not a dotted, a solid one. So this color, now the actual color for the same border that I want to implement should be red. So definitely if I go back on my browser, all I've said so far is I want to implement a border which is of type style as an attribute. The actual thickness should be 3px, and the type of border is the one that's solid, not dotted solid, and the actual color should be red. When we go back on our browser and I refresh the page, you can tell that I've added a border line to the text, the value of training blah 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 applied in practice. So this is the actual implementation of color. And luckily, when it comes to the IDE that we are using, which is Visual Studio, you can even select another color. If you just take your cursor on the actual color, you'll be given of course another element that allows you now to select multiple color. If I want, I can change the background to red. If I want, I can put my background maybe to dark blue or anything related to that. If I want, I can even reduce on the transparency and anything related to that. If I go back on my browser, you can tell that definitely I've added some changes. If I refresh, I've changed the actual background color. That's why I love Visual Studio Code. It gives us multiple functions that we can use if we want to apply more data to the color. Actually, even on text, if I go on where it says white, definitely I take my cursor, I can select multiple text. Do I want this type of green? Is it the one that's called green, yellow, or anything related to that? If I go back on my cursor, definitely I refresh, the color will definitely change. That's the beauty of using Visual Studio Code. So please friends, let's proceed on our next session as we understand more on CSS, because this is CSS, this is Cascading Style Sheet language, an inline one. Now, are there some types of CSS, some ways in which we could use for we to implement the styling on an HTML document? Let's proceed on our next session as we want to understand more on HTML. Please don't forget to subscribe and you are on CodeNet.